So listen to this tremendous insight, a realm of insight from my grandfather. This is the Torah of my grandfather, of Shlomo Zatzal, who was a Rav and Rebbe in Denver, Paisik Makubal, and a tremendous individual. So here we go. Ish ki yafli neder, when a person will, again, you simply translate, will make a vow. Ish ki yafli neder. Now the word yafli is a very strange word, and that's what my grandfather's going to tackle. What does it mean? Ish ki yafli neder, when a person will make a vow. Upeish Rashi, what does Rashi say? What does yafli neder mean? Yefarish beviv, when a person will utter with their mouth the vow. Yesh lahavin. We have to understand, be'inyan nedarim, regarding this idea of vows, lama tzrichim davka lefartam bepeh. Why do you have to utter it with your mouth? The akol haylech achar mirosei, and the halacha is everything goes by what you said, v'lo achar kavanosei, not what you thought. This is halachas of vows that go by what you said, not by what you thought. Okay. So my grandfather says, why? Why is it so linked to what you utter with your lips? Yesh loymar al pi pashat. So he's going to start with this like simple idea, and he's going to expand it by getting into the word yafli. What does it mean? Yesh loymar al pi pashat. First, a simple understanding. Ki hu mechaste Hashem aleinu. It's Hashem's kindness with us. Hashem's being kind. Why? Af ki rabis machshavas b'lev ish. Because even though a person has a lot of thoughts, al kol zeh hu yisbarach ein mechayv oisanu. Hashem does not obligate you based on all the good thoughts you had. You probably this morning thought, I'll do this, I'll do that. You probably had a lot of things you thought you'd do. A lot of good spiritual things, a lot of good physical things you thought you'd do. Yet today is going to be the day I start to diet. Right? Today is going to be the day I start to exercise. And then you're always like, is it bedtime already? What happened to the whole list I thought in my mind? Imagine if you had to keep all the things that in the morning you thought, I'm going to do today. I mean, that'd be overwhelming. So Hashem says, no, the things you think, you don't have to keep. You only will be obligated to keep the things that you vowed you would keep with your mouth. Because a person always wants to do this. I have this idea, I'll do this, to this New Year's resolution. And if the halacha was that the moment you thought it, you'd be obligated to keep it, there'd be no way for any of us to survive. And we'd all be accountable all the time for all of our good thoughts. This is what we actually say in the davening of Rosh Hashanah. We say, Hashem, you are the one who knows thoughts on the day of judgment, Rosh Hashanah. Hashem, we give a crown to you, to the one who knows thoughts, and to the one who extinguishes or overcomes his anger on the day of judgment. What's the connection to knowing thoughts and Hashem having to quell his anger? The connection is, even though Hashem knows our thoughts, and a person has a lot of bad thoughts, a lot of bad plans that they think they're going to do that day sometimes. Nonetheless, Hashem overcomes his anger. He says, and he doesn't punish us for those thoughts we had, the plans we had to do this and that wrong or incorrect, or how we're going to behave. Hashem says, no, until you take action, it doesn't count against you. And so he's saying it's the same way Hashem in that kindness has with good. You have a lot of good ideas, but if you are accountable to keep every good idea you had, it would be impossible, be overwhelming, and we'd be swamped with guilt. So Hashem says, no, you can have a lot of good ideas. And by the way, P.S., they're good. It's good to have a lot of good dreams. It's good to have a lot of good yearnings, those she'ifas, what we call in Hebrew she'ifas, which is this yearning to be more, that defines a person. It's very, very defining, and we've given shiurim about that in the past. It has a tremendous impact on a person. But only because you're not accountable to it. If you are accountable to it, you'd be in trouble very quickly, right? So this is Hashem gave you allowance. Dream big. Accept on yourself all these things. Just don't utter it as a vow. What you utter as a vow is you're locked, and that you have to keep. And there are times maybe you need to do that. Times you need to lock in like that. However, you're reserved. Your accountability is reserved only for when you take it to that level of commitment, of vowing to do it, which in general we try not to do. Right? We try not to do that unless you consult with an LOR, local Orthodox rabbi / mentor to help you, if that should ever be relevant in your life, to take an actual vow to lock yourself into something. We like to do the other way, which is we say bli neder, without a vow, but we commit. We commit to things and we try to lock in. You try and create a mindset that you keep your commitment, but we do try and avoid vows because of the fact that it is very hard to not slip up, and it's very severe to not keep a vow.
Rabbi, how do you distinguish? For instance, in work and stuff, there's people who very much, you say, well, I'll see you in the morning. And people don't want you to say, that'll be the plan, or I'll plan on doing that. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear you say, okay, I will do that. They want you to, is that considered a vow?
So very good. It's not considered a vow because a vow needs somewhat of language behind it and intent. Although honestly, I don't know the intricacies of vows. It's not something that comes up so often. But the Pele Yoetz writes in those types of scenarios, for your own recognition that Hashem runs your life, it's appropriate to say what we like to say often, right? Is Amir Hashem be'ezras Hashem, with Hashem's help, if Hashem wants. That the Pele Yoetz says is not to make it not a vow. It's to recognize that you're not in control of your life. So it's clear from the Pele Yoetz that to say, I'll see you in the morning, and I know, because it's uncomfortable to say. I've been in that position. It's uncomfortable, but you're right. Sometimes, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's not even religious, they don't need you to wave God in their face. They're not looking for that. So, sometimes I'll do a God willing. See you in the morning, God willing. Sometimes that sounds better than I plan, right? Even though it's the same meaning. So something's back. Absolutely, I'll be there, God willing. That seems to go over smoother, so I'll put that in. Like I'll be like, class resumes next week, God willing. And I'll tuck that in at the end. And then people seem to be okay with that, so that's a good trick. But if you can't, it's okay. You can think it. Okay? You can think of it that, that's not a vow. Now, I would be a little bit more hesitant to say, I promise I'll see you in the morning, which people do have the habit sometimes of saying. Kids sometimes say, it's not, that's the way, I swear to you. That's getting a little bit dicey. Okay? That's getting a little bit problematic. So I would avoid that. Okay. So that's so far, in a certain sense, a practical reason why Hashem did that, of the kindness of Hashem. Now we're going to recognize something I think profound about ourselves and about this process, which will spill over even into other parts of our own life. But even deeper, Nira, it appears as follows. It said when a person will yafli neder. The word yafli or pele has a lot of different meanings. Aleph, number one, loshen bitoy svasav. It means to utter. Like Rashi said, lo hitzia neder mipiv. You expressed the vow with your mouth. Beis, but it has a second meaning. Loshen kiyama neder. It also means to fulfill your vow. Kidichsiv lefali neder, like the pasuk says, fulfill their vow also comes from the same word lefali neder. So it can mean to utter the vow. It could mean to keep the vow. And the gimel And the third one, Lashon, it obviously means more things than this, but it really does mean more things than this. But a third meaning is Lashon Havdalah. It can mean to separate. Kemoi v'havle Hashem bein mikne Yisrael bein mikne Mitzrayim. We had by the Dever, we had that Hashem said He separated between the flock of the Jews and the flock of the Egyptians, and the word there was also the word Pele. It was still the same shirish, the same core root word was there to mean to separate. So far, and it does mean other things, but in this context, he's saying three meanings: to say the vow, to keep the vow, and to differentiate. What's the connection between these three? To separate or differentiate. It means to differentiate. You mean, what does it mean in this context? Yeah, no, he didn't say yet. He didn't say it. So far, he just said these are the three meanings of the word, and now he's going to explain how they all tie together with the concept of vows and other parts of our life. The concept is as follows: a person has a lot of, you could say thoughts, ideas, thoughts, and they have a lot of feelings that are not genuine, meaning they're not, I would say better, genuine is not the right word, aren't accurate. They're not accurate. Let's let him play it out. Let's see. They're not accurate. A person thinks often that he is wiser than he truly is. Most people think they're very wise. I'm a very wise person. Odds are, if we stack you up against other people, you're probably average, right? But people think I'm pretty smart, right? So people think that. So that's a thought a person has, a feeling a person has. It's truly untrue. But it doesn't stop you from having it and feeling it very strongly. Oy Giber, a guy thinks he's strong. Umargish koyach ba'atzma, a guy thinks I'm very mighty. Lasses harbe dvarim, I could do a lot of things. Mashvem is saying a lot of things he can't do. How often do you look at somebody else doing their job and you go, listen, I chose to be in Kailo, but if I would do that job, I'd do it a lot better. Yeah? Till you try. And then you realize you stink at that job, and that guy's actually pretty good at that job, right? A lot of times you look from the day, oh, for sure I could do that, right? For sure I could do that. Okay, so that's what happens with a person, with ourselves sometimes. We have incorrect feelings and incorrect thoughts and assessments. Okay, so now what do we do? So in a certain sense, a person's living in a lie. They're living in an illusion. Fancy, they think certain things are true about their own capabilities, about who they are, that are not true. Now what? He said, but when a person will take that thought and actually concretize it into words, and then he'll say them, he'll express them, then a lot of times at that point that they're actually verbalizing it, they're able to assess them, whether they're actually accurate. So a guy in his own head has this whole fantasy about himself. I'm all this. And then somebody comes over to you and say, so like, how smart do you think would you rate yourself like compared to the people in the room? You look around and you have to say the words. You probably end up saying, I'm average. Right? Because when you're forced to say it and concretize it that way, somehow that like brings you down, anchors you back in reality. It's too real to have that fog of mind or fog of war, where everything lives in this fantasy world. You probably still think you look like you did when you're 25, right? I still do. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, whoa. Where'd that old guy come and why he's hanging out with me? Right? Yeah, I'm still 25. It means in your mind, you're somewhere that's not even real. But the mirror concretizes it. If somebody asks you how old you are, it concretizes it. The more something becomes expressed in the real, tangible world, the more it brings into focus the truth. Ve'al kain, he says, yesh kesher bein hagimel perushim anal. He said, now that we know that that's true, we could go back and connect all three of the explanations of the translations of the word pele. Ki al yedei ma shemoitzi machshavte mipeh, because through a person has a lot of thoughts, things I want to do, a lot of resolutions I want to accept of myself. Okay, now you have to go through the process of making a vow. You're going to have to put it into words. Through, which was yafli, neder means you're going to express the neder. Through going through the process of starting to verbalize what you believe you can achieve, what you believe you should resolve to do, what will happen? Yochel lidaktek ulahavdil. Translation number 3 is to distinguish and separate. Now, by uttering it, translation number 1, you're able to actually discern as you say it, wait a minute, am I up for this? So I start to discern the difference between fantasy and reality, or something that fits with what you're up to and what's the next step for you, or what you should be doing, and something that's incorrect. Or I'll give you an even more subtle, something that maybe is within range of what you could do, but is it something that's appropriate for the situation you're in, right? Versus something that maybe this isn't the moment for it. Now, as you start to verbalize it, speak it out. In this case, in the context of neder, we'll see that it's broader than that. You start to have a better perception. Wait, does this fit? Is this right? And you're able to discern will I actually be able to keep this? And that was translation number 2, keeping it. Okay, so you just wove all three together. By verbalizing it, I'm able to distinguish and discern whether this is going to be something I can actually keep, and whether it fits me or not. Let's take this out of the context of vows, which probably none of us are going to make too soon, and see how this applies. He's going to apply it to tefillah. Hopefully we'll have time to apply it to something else also. This is also the meaning of the concept behind, one of the ideas behind tefillah, of davening. Expressing yourself during davening. Because the feelings a person has when they're standing in front of Hashem, like love and fear and awe, very quickly, once those feelings get stirred awake, they can end up going all over the place. This is a concept all the Chassidei Shvarim talk about, and it's true. It's a beneficial conversation. We can't have it now, where things, you could use this as a trick to help you, but it also could be negative. Meaning, what do you find by we have this concept? Let's say by Zman Simchasenu, you'll have after the Yom Tovim this Bahab, the fast Bahab. Why? Because things that may have gone wrong over the Yom Tov. And why would something go wrong over the Yom Tov? It's a very spiritually elevated time. Yes, but in the spiritual elevation, it was very exciting. It was very passionate. You were on fire. That fire is very good when it's focused on Hashem, but it's once it's stirred away, it could very easily drift somewhere inappropriate. And therefore, after the Yom Tov, we do a reassessment and make sure that we cross any lines that we shouldn't have crossed. Okay, so that's in general true, all the time, right? I don't think it's like a question, like you find like the music stumping at a wedding. Like at first it's like, yeah, Gishmak, the wedding. And then like you find somebody do something stupid, sometimes on the dance floor, sometimes on the other side of the mechitza. And I'm serious. You're like, what happened? Well, the answer is, nobody meant to. But as you got caught up and riled up and excited, it started shifting from excitement of the wedding to just like loose, wild chaos in you. And then it went somewhere it shouldn't have gone. Okay, so that's often true. And that happens sometimes when a person is even getting into davening. Afterwards, it can go anywhere. So he says, K'moy liznus, like to inappropriate relationships, ulekas, to anger. You're all excited. You're very, very fired up inside. And then your kid does something. You're like, okay, so that it was good. That was your davening. Unfortunately, your davening manifest at your kid wasn't very pleasant for him. So, like the Baal Tanya said, therefore, since I'm going to wake up these feelings inside of me, but now they could be untethered, therefore we plug those emotions into the words of davening. That way we could define them. When you verbalize something, you give a definition and distinction, and you're able to now, in a certain sense, have something in front of you that's concrete, that you could sort of shape and understand and direct. So the actual verbalizing of a concept actually makes it, in some sense, controllable. You start to realize where it doesn't belong, you start to realize where it does belong, and you start to develop the ability to keep it there. You understand? It's very incredible. The thoughts and ideas, they live in an ethereal world that in a certain sense is unchained, not based on reality, and can be very deceptive and very hard to control. Putting them into words is the beginning of giving yourself a handle on the reality of them and the ability to keep them where you want them to be. This is the concept of vidoy. We have when a person does something wrong, they want to do tshuva, they express to Hashem what they did wrong. Why? Hashem knows what I did wrong. Why do I have to say anything? I know what I did wrong. He knows what I did wrong. So let's just say, are we good? We're good. Why do I have to say out what I did wrong? And listen to this, the beauty of this line right here. Because many times, because a lot of times a person does not have the proper measure and understanding of how big what they did wrong is, how big the sin was. Or sometimes they think that it wasn't so bad, or they think it was worse than it was. And as we make that error on both sides. We don't appreciate what we did wrong. Sometimes we think, no. And sometimes we sit there beating ourselves up over it again and again and again. Let it go. It wasn't that bad. So we don't have a real handle. It's all floating in our minds. It's all over the place. It's unchained. So Chazal told us, when they told us to verbalize it, that by putting it into words and concretizing it and expressing, Hashem, I did such and such wrong, now it becomes a reality that's tangible. You're able to get a handle on how bad and how manageable what we did wrong was. Okay, so we touched on a concept that spanned a number of different areas of Judaism: vows, davening, vidoy, confession, tshuva, correct, and vidoy, and the idea. I want to just take this the next little bit, which I think shifts it into a daily practical tip. All this is true, and this is all what was built in to halacha and to tefillah, and it's something you can access. But the truth, which is such a broad truth, is helpful all the time. The Chazal tell us, and my Rosh Hashiva Rav Henoch Leibowitz pointed this out, Nadav and Avihu, who brought a korban by the inauguration of the Mishkan of the Tabernacle, and they got killed for that because it wasn't appropriate. Chazal say one of the problems was that they did not take eitzah with each other. They didn't ask advice of each other. So, Rosh Hashiva Rav Henoch Leibowitz said, I understand. They both came up with the idea to do it. So they didn't seek counsel with each other. And let's say they would have. Hey, what do you think? It's a good idea? Yeah, good idea. What do you think? Good idea? They would have done it. He says, no. No. What do you mean no? In an unbelievable way, as is often the case, truth can come from two very different camps, and they both find the truth. Rosh Hashiva Rav Henoch Leibowitz said, no, because when you speak it out, you gain a clarity that you didn't have in your own mind. In your mind, it sounds like a good idea. And even though I'm thinking it's a good idea and you're thinking it's a good idea, but when we talk about it, we're both going to realize it's a bad idea. Unbelievable?
Who says it's a bad idea?
It was a bad idea. They were not supposed to bring that sacrifice in the ketores in the tabernacle. Yeah, but no, not always is a bad idea. But the point is that when a person to talk ideas out and to not try and navigate life like a maverick going solo is to understand that even though you have clarity in your mind about it, and even though you're a wise person, the fact is, in that realm, it lives a little bit in the world of fantasy, and it's not grounded, and therefore you yourself can't even assess it right. Sometimes you speak it out to somebody, they're not even brighter than you, they may not even have good insights, although many times they will have good insights and they will see other perspectives, but even if none of that happens, just going through the process of saying it to them, you will gain new insight into why you're doing it, whether you should do it, does it fit, does it belong? So the concept of just talking out an idea, and some people like to even talk ideas out to themselves, even talk through an idea, right? And it's true. They have sometimes in learning, we write it down or teach it to somebody. You say write notes. So what? Write notes. Not obviously to have the notes. That's a wonderful thing, but not to have the notes. Write the notes to get it clear. No, I don't understand. Write the notes to get it clear. I have it clear. I just learned it. I have it clear. I'm going to be the one who writes it down, right? Now, let me tell you something. And I hate writing notes, okay? And one of the reasons I hate writing notes is because it's really frustrating how many things you don't have clear that you thought you had clear. And you start to write, and then you're like, wait a minute, how should I express that? And the moment you wonder how to express that, you realize, I see two possible ways, and they mean different things. And which one is it? Now, what happens in your brain? Because in your brain, you have the ability to just blend everything, right? One thing can morph into this, back, forth. It's it is. It's just, it's all, it's kosher, right? And then you're like, what is it? Oh, yeah, I see the whole. Right? So, my grandfather is saying that Hashem and the Chachamim built this into Yiddishkeit because this is a truth. But for us to realize that when you come to davening and you express the words, it's not just expressing and that itself is powerful, but whenever you take a concept and you put it into words, you're developing an entirely new relationship with that own feeling you had, the own concept you had, you're making it real. And certainly in the many, many other areas, like he's saying here, you have a vow. So, okay, you're not going to make a vow, but you probably have a lot of ideas. So you're not going to make a vow. That's not where you're going to get your clarity from. But that does mean that speaking it out is where you're going to get clarity, whether you should or shouldn't, can or can't. You know? There are times that sometimes I've noticed something frustrating that happened. Frustrating. People make decisions that have very bad effects. And I have felt sometimes, I have no complaint that you got the decision wrong. Now, and I'm sure people have this complaint against me. We always could see it clearer in somebody else, right? I was just saying, I'm not frustrated that you made the wrong choice. I can understand. I'm not frustrated that you have the wrong outlook. I understand. We have different outlooks. I just am frustrated that you didn't think to run it by somebody first. You didn't think something that impactful should be run by if you would have run it by anybody, they would have helped you see the shortcoming of that plan or the way you're doing that, the way you're affecting it. So it's just such a golden piece of advice here, which is in our own growth, our own Yiddishkeit. There's the Rebbe who can give you guidance, and there's the friend who's wiser and insight, and that's 100% true. That will be true in all the times throughout life. It's so many things. People will have so many perspectives that are so helpful. But this is talking about you just realizing that you yourself, every one of us, has a shortcoming in our ability to even assess ourselves in our own life. And the more that we verbalize and concretize and try and speak it out and make it real, whether that's through the vows, through the tshuva process, through the words of davening, or through schmoozing with our friends, or sometimes just talking to Hashem himself. You're taking concepts which live in a place where they're maybe not anchored in reality, and you're making them real, you're making them permanent, you're making them defined, and you're giving yourself the clarity in where they belong, how they should be manifest, and how you should take the next steps in actualizing your own Yiddishkeit and your own greatness. May we all be Zeiche. Shkayach.